Welcome to the Coffee Experts Club. If you're at all interested in anything we talk about in this episode, go ahead and check out the description down below, or if you even just want to know more about us, click on the links below. Now on to the episode. Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome, Mr. David.
Thank you, sir. Nice to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you, man. Welcome, Coffee Experts Club aficionados. Drew and Aaron are both down in Belize vacationing because they have nothing better to do than sit on the beach. So
it must be nice down there. Hot damn, boys.
It is nice. We went 2 years ago. I would love to go back with we went and my kid I think she was 6 months old. It's not somewhere you go with a 6-month-old.
Well, there's not enough consistent AC to deal with the crying.
There's not. There's not. I don't know if you heard, when we were down there, they didn't have power for, it was like 12 hours. And it's like, it's the heat's unbearable. And we're like, at what point do I call it? Like, do we leave at some point?
Well, and there's no heads up either. They'll just be like, hey, we're not going to have power today. And you're like, excuse me, we run a business. How can you not have power today?
It was like, I think maybe lunchtime. No, it was like in the morning and everything just turned off. And we were like, what? What's going on?
They're like, the power just goes out sometimes. They'll like shoot us a text and they'll say, hey, you won't have power from this time to this time. And we're like, I guess we're doing mostly cold brew then.
So it's a great place. It's got some kinks it's working out still, but it's a great vacation spot. Anyways, we've got David here. David is essentially the director of international shipping and logistics for De Los Mayas. He works in the Collab team as well. So you're essentially the guy who's getting product from point A in the U.S. to point, Z by the time you go through everything, right? In Belize.
Yeah. So, we got to get it from the vendor and then we got to get it to our freight forwarder who then sends it to the first location in Belize. And we're up to 3 locations now down there. And so it'll make it to the first location. Then I got to make sure obviously it got there and that everything arrived in good order. And then we got to forward it from there. And I think there are 3 touch points from our primary location to our island location. So I think by the time I'm done getting product there, I've gone through anywhere from 5 to 7 touch points, depending on the vendor. My job started off very difficult and has gotten much easier as we've relocated a lot of our resource allocation to Belize.
Well, and the funny thing is, like, when you just like say it at face value, you're just like, yeah, we just need to get some cups down to the coffee shop. And you're like, oh, that's no big deal. And then you're like, oh wait, the coffee shop is an hour and a half boat ride away from where the cups get delivered.
Yeah. And really, truly, when I first started, it was a matter of I happened to know the right people. I had a friend who was in business supplies, and she supplied a bunch of coffee shops that I actually found as clients for when I was working for her. And so we had a great working relationship. We were able to get great pricing. And then I was so pumped that we had found everything we need. We were going to be able to get it all in one spot. And then, we get to the first spot and I'm like, oh, I have to deal with them. And then it gets to the second spot and I'm like, oh, and I have to deal with them. And then the third and it's just like, oh my good Lord, I just need cups. I just need cups to sell coffee. That's it.
Yep. I think obviously one of the things, if you're opening a coffee shop in the States, it's something that we hugely take advantage. You find a vendor and they just bring it to you. I think really where this is applicable for the people who are listening is really in what you guys have started doing, and that is taking the product and saying, okay, it's a pain in the ass to ship all of this and it's expensive. Can we just make it in-house? And I think a lot of coffee shops are looking at, can I make it in-house? What are there's some glaring pros and cons of doing that. What would you say, like the top 5 off of your head of why you should and why you shouldn't? Or maybe it's just why you should.
Yeah. So I think that I won't say that universally across the board you should. I think that there is universally money to be saved. But that being said, I think a huge part of the in-house product development that I hadn't considered was the logistics of it. You say make a syrup, and I started off just cooking syrup over in my kitchen. I was making a big old pan of syrup, and then I would get it into the bottle. I tried different bottling techniques, seeing how long it would last. And so at first it was like, oh, this is actually really simple. I need sugar, I need water, and I need a concentrate. We do mostly syrups right now down at De Los Mayas, and we've just recently started doing frat mix as well. But for the syrups themselves, I'm like, oh, this is easy. Like, syrup making isn't really a science or even an art. It's just a matter of like, you do stuff on a timeline, and if it's done on the correct timeline and you follow the steps, there shouldn't be any issues with the product that comes out. But then, like you were saying, with the touch points to get product down to Belize, so I send down the concentrates, and it's a matter of, well, I'm up in Oregon, generally in my day-to-day work, we're
Yeah.
going to Collab team. And so we don't have humidity in Oregon. That's just not really a thing here. We get too much rain for it to be consistently humid. And it's
Yeah.
also not hot, like at all. And so our hottest point is like the average heat of Belize. And so I hadn't considered, okay, sending concentrates down. They have this huge period of time where they're just cooking in the
Sitting
back
on
of
the
the truck.
truck. Yeah.
So we had to go through a couple of different vendors to determine, okay, what's a good concentrate that's going to be able to hold up to the heat, but then is also going to cook right in the heat once we get it to where it
That's
needs to
so
go.
funny. I
So,
would have never thought of that too, by the way. That's like, who thinks of that?
and why would you? Like there's no reason to think about it until you're looking the problem dead in the face and realizing I dropped $50 on concentrate that's now going in the garbage can because I didn't think about heat.
That's so
And so,
funny.
I mean, circling back to the pros and cons, I think that the con is always going to be more logistics to manage. You've got to find somebody on your team that you could trust to be have really strong attention to detail and just over and over again do the same thing without degradation. A lot of people, when they do the same thing over and over again, they stop paying attention. Their eyes can't see the issues anymore.
Yep.
And so then you'll have them start making problems and it's like, whoa, we're 6 months or a year into this. Why are we now just seeing problems? And it's like, well, they're not looking anymore.
Yeah.
And so you need to find someone that you could trust. You need to find a vendor that gives you a good product. We've gone through, I think, 3 different concentrate vendors until we found one that was a really strong partner for us. So I would say that's the biggest con, is finding the right people and establishing a good, strong, repetitive system that can withstand any transition of people. People don't stay in jobs forever. And so I'm real nervous for the first time we lose our syrup production lady on the island because she's been like clockwork, just cranking them out. And I know that the second we lose her, I'm going to have to dive back in and put hours
the whole
into
training thing again. So
training
then
them up.
that was actually, I think you kind of answered my second question, is you're primarily, what you're doing is you're shipping all of the raw ingredients and they're processing there on the island versus you creating and then sending down a finished product.
Yeah. So, I mean, the primary reason for that being shelf life, right? So I could make the product here. But that being said, when you produce your product, and we make our product a little bit different than the standard. So in your Torani syrups, their ratio of sugar to water is about 2 to 1. So they'll do 2 times the volume. That's important. Something I hadn't considered as well. You need to be measuring by weight, not the volume. But anyway, so Torani is 2 to 1. We do 1.5 because we found that makes the flavor a little bit stronger and the sugar a little bit less punch in the mouth.
Interesting.
But that does also limit the shelf life. A big reason that Torani does that is you put that much sugar into a product, it'll survive a nuclear holocaust. There's nothing that could grow in that amount of sugar. And so that's the primary reason. But then also locally down there, sugar is way cheaper than for me to buy sugar up here. And so I think there's a little bit of a balancing act, of where you're going to produce that product and how it's going to be most financially viable.
Interesting. Yeah, I figured with the sugar, because I mean that's kind of the same thing. Like if you're a home bartender, and you want to make your own like simple syrup, you just do double the sugar and you've got simple syrup until you die. That makes total sense in why Torani tastes like you're getting a cavity when you drink it.
Yeah.
I totally lost where I was just going with that. Oh well.
No, you're good. I was going to say another huge pro to being able to make our own product is the amount of control you have over the flavors themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, Torani, they do a great job for what they are. Torani, Monin, all the big guys, they do it relatively the same and they produce relatively the same like string of products. But when you're doing it in-house, I could combine any number of concentrates into a syrup bottle and make my own, like white chocolate tiramisu or a dark chocolate hazelnut combo that you might not be able to find if you're just trying to buy syrups over the counter.
Yeah, no, that's actually a great point. And I think where people listening in the States can really gain that leg up because, I mean, you're talking about costs already. That's a great point. The logistics is a bit of a pain in the ass, but if you can deal with that and then all of a sudden you've got your own combination of my own signature drinks that really nobody else can have because I'm the one who's creating what's going into it. That's a huge leg up when it comes to like what you can niche down into and what you want your drink potentials to be. I know we've had clients in the past where they make their own started making their own in-house syrups and sauces, and they wanted to go with more, premium, more organic, more not necessarily sugar-free, but all of these sort of dietary restrictions because they wanted really, really clean products that I'm sure exists now. But if you were to make it yourself, you're still going to save the cost on that, I would assume, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the premium that you spend, oh, what's the brand? I'm blanking on it now. It's not Monin or Tarani. It's the other primary brand, but they'll do really high quality, like organic style syrups, but they'll charge you, I think it's like 2.5 times. I could pay $5, $6, $7 a bottle for a Tarani bottle of syrup, but you're looking at like 10 to 14 if you're talking about buying something organic. And I mean, the concentrates themselves are slightly more expensive to go in organic direction. But that being said, not 2 to 3 times the price, which is a much bigger number for people.
Well, and the big reason is, obviously you're cutting out the middleman, right? But you're able to at a certain point buy in bulk. Is that the biggest cost savings you're seeing?
100%. That's the biggest cost savings. I mean, I buy a 32-ounce container of, let's say, white chocolate concentrate. That costs me somewhere in the range of, I want to say like $40, which feels expensive for 32 ounces, but I use 2 millimeters or milliliters, sorry, of concentrate per bottle of syrup. And that's the high end. Some of our syrups, I think our hazelnut, 1 milliliter of concentrate does it for the bottle.
Wild.
And so, 32 ounces of the product makes me something like 1,500 bottles of white chocolate. And so that right there, I mean, 1,500 times 5, and I'm not good at quick math, but it's several $1,000s worth of syrup that I just bought for essentially $40. And I mean, we got to buy the sugar. We have to pay people for their time. It's really important to us at De Los Mayas that we're compensating fairly. And so we actually pay by the syrup bottle rather than by time. And that lets her really batch through them quick and make really good money for syrup production. But yeah, I mean, on the organic side of things, we had initially started off, we really wanted to be organic. Our owner was really adamant that he wanted it to be a clean product. And we started that for a while, but organic products have shorter shelf life. And so that was what ultimately led us to transition out of that. Is you have to take into account making organic products is phenomenal. I try and consume as many organic products as I can in my day-to-day life. From a business perspective, not always the most financially viable. So it's kind of about finding that middle balance. But I think something that you'll be dealing with in the state, or that you won't be dealing with in the States, that I have to deal with right now is a month of lead time to get where it needs to go. Yeah. That's a big change.
So you could effectively, if you're in the States wanting to go organic, you could, because your product isn't just sitting on a boat for a month. It's you're creating it going. I mean, and that's kind of what we all know about organic groceries. That's why they're so expensive, because they don't last as long. I can't go and just put it on my shelf for 6 months and come back to my box of macaroni and cheese 6 months later and it's great. It's not the way it works. So and I think the great thing about that is your customers know that. Everybody just kind of knows that organic means more expensive because it's not as processed. It's not going to last as long. Therefore, it's better. But, I think if you're in your own production, you have the ability to then, if really the difference is the concentrates or the difference is slightly how you're making it, you could get to the point where you could offer, hey, we've got a vanilla latte. And if you want a premium organic vanilla latte with organic milk, and if you're worried about a clean latte, well, then we've got that too. It's $1.50 more if you want to pay that, but you can then put yourself in the position where you can offer an option.
Absolutely. And I mean, especially here in the States, I think that's a big concern for me personally too. We put so many chemicals in our food. And I mean, I was living abroad for a little while. I came back home. I could barely eat for weeks because all of our food just made me sick. And so it's a huge concern here. In Belize, they could care less. Yeah. They could not care less at all, actually. And so if you offer them an organic versus a non-organic, they're always going to say what's cheaper and go with the cheaper option. Yeah. And so that was a big part of it too. You need to know your customer base and what's important to them. Like, as a business owner, there will be things that are important to me, but if 90% of my customers don't agree, I can't justify doing that because I'll lose business.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. It's you're creating a product for what your customer wants, not what you want them to want, which we see across the board in every industry. Yeah, and that's honestly, that's one of the big points where a lot of early coffee shop owners, and if you're listening now and you're getting ready to open your first coffee shop, a lot of people go into it saying, this is what I want them to want from me, instead of listening to what your customers want. I remember back to the old energy drink days, there was a huge pushback against energy drinks. And people were like, no, I make coffee. Go to the gas station if you want an energy drink. And now Starbucks has blended energy drinks. They just released, I think a few weeks ago. And I was like, it was like if there's any other sort of like nail in the coffin of whether coffee shops should have energy drinks, Starbucks has a blended energy drink now that you can offer. It's giving the customers what they want.
100%. Yeah. And I mean, I worked at Starbucks back when energy drinks were becoming a big deal. And frankly, if they had listened to me then, they'd be several $billion better
Right.
off, because that right there is a moneymaker guarantee. There's a lot of people that don't like coffee, but everyone likes sugar.
Yep, that's so true. So, I mean, more of the story there is if your customers love organic and want clean, you've got an option that you can make yourself. If they don't, then don't bother. Unless it's, of course, obviously something that's super important to you, and it's just part of your niche, and I want to be organic and it tastes just as good, and I'm willing to eat the cost of the organic ingredients. But again, yeah, that's a part of where you have to make the decision as a business owner. What would you say have been the toughest sort of things that you've learned along the way when it comes to the logistics of like setting up how they're going to be making these syrups, putting some sort of SOP in place for the training process, all of that? Has that just been kind of like a stumble through it as you go, or has it been some really big issues where you're like, oh, I should have thought of that? Like the syrup heat.
Yeah, I think that most of it, I think when we started, it was very much so stumble through it until we get there. I would say that if you're listening right now and you're at the phase of getting ready to open a coffee shop, I wouldn't immediately start with going down the syrup route, because what you're talking about doing really truly is starting another business, a production house. And so even if you don't quantify it as such, that's what you're doing. And especially when you're a new business owner, you really need to focus on what is your niche? What is your clientele? There are much more important questions than how do I drive down my overall cost of goods sold? Sure. That's a later down the line question. But we started doing it, I think we were 2 or 3 years into it. And I think that the biggest hurdle initially was recognizing that syrups are really easy, but sauces are really difficult. Like syrups, like I was saying, it's just a process. You follow the time, you're doing the right things with, stirring and checking the product and making sure your temperatures are really, like, if you're following the process religiously, the same thing comes out every single time. A sauce is not the same way. The sauce can be affected by, like, if your burner distributes heat unevenly on the bottom of your pan, your sauce isn't going to come out. Like, that's even if you do literally everything right. And so I think that the hardest initial step was becoming the expert as much as I could on production, which was just not something I've done. I've been a barista for years. I've never had to produce something like that from scratch. Yep. And so that's always where you want to start, is becoming the expert on, okay, what's this going to actually cost me? What's this going to actually save me? And how long is it going to take me to set this up? Because I think that, like I said, initially we were thinking, I'm going to be able to roll this out in a couple of weeks. I'm going to make the product, then I'm going to send the supplies they need. They're going to buy what they need to supplement, and then we're going to start production. But really, truly, it probably took, I would say, 2 to 3 months of, going back and forth on what is the recipe for this flavor. Oh, we haven't done it yet. So start at 1 milliliter and taste, and then go up 0.5 milliliter and taste. And it was very much a matter of nailing down what we want our recipes to be, and then establishing, okay, if this is our recipe, what is our cost from there? How do we keep product moving in a relatively consistent fashion to ensure that our production house always has the product it needs to continue making that, so that we don't have to go out and supplement what we buy? Because what's really not viable is buying a product and making that product. Yeah. Because then you're just
especially in your case, I would assume a vanilla that you make is going to taste wildly different than a vanilla Torani.
And I mean, not wildly, all flavors have their base notes. And I mean, if you find a good, strong concentrate vendor and you copy the 2-to-1 recipe that Torani uses, you could get really well in line with what they do.
Gotcha.
But it is a noticeable enough difference. It is substantially sweeter. And so it also does definitely affect your beverage quality when you are consistently switching the source.
Mm-hmm. And so the ultimate goal, obviously, for all of this is you've got primary control of your ingredients. You're driving down costs, which is obviously, helping your bottom line. And I think what you hit on the head is important to note is you've got essentially another business you're opening. Yeah. Which, if you're really, really looking down the road, that's another potential, if your goal is to build a coffee empire, then sell it, you essentially have another business that looks lucrative to a person who's looking to buy you out as well. So definitely, I mean, a lot of great opportunities, but I think you said it perfectly too. This is not I opened my first coffee shop and now I'm going to.
Yeah, I would say once you cross the 2 shop threshold, or if you're into like the second or third year of your business with 1 shop even, and you've got a really strong handle on your cogs, I think that what really drove us to bring it in-house is we're looking at our cogs and it's like, we can't cut the cost of cups and lids. We're buying in bulk already. We're getting them from a good reputable vendor. We can't really cut the cost of our beans. We can't really cut the cost of obviously our labor. And so it really boiled down to, this is the best way for us ultimately to save money. And you nailed it right on the head, control the product that we're creating so that our drinks are always the quality that we want them to be.
Yeah. Consistency. And I think we talk about that probably once every 3 weeks, is if nothing will matter if your customers can't rely on the product that they're getting. If I can't rely on you for the exact same vanilla latte every single day, then you're going to lose me as a customer. And I think, creating that yourself and saying, hey, you can always rely on the fact that you can't get this vanilla latte anywhere else but here, and it's always going to be the same. That's fantastic. That brings us to the end of it, Mr. David. Thank you for joining us here on Coffee Experts Club this week. Again, if you or if anybody you know is looking to open a coffee shop and you're wanting to jump into the business, coffeeexpertsacademy.com is a perfect place to start. Obviously, you guys can always come here and listen. David, thanks again for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, sir. It was a great time.
See you guys.